Welcome to First Parish in Needham, a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1711 along with the town of Needham. We are a proud LGBTQ welcoming congregation, climate justice seeking green sanctuary, and level 2 sanctuary supporting congregation for immigration justice. Whoever you are, whatever your background, and wherever you're from, you're welcome here. I'm Jen Packard. My family and I have been members of First Parish for about 15 years. This year, I am proud to serve on the parish committee as vice president and head of the program council. As you know, what's happening right now in the congregation is very unusual because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Although our building is closed, our faith community is open. We hope all of you will plug into our Zoom gathering opportunities throughout the week, including our Zoom social hour after every Sunday service. And today, I'd like to extend an invitation to all of you to attend our live, in-person, volunteer Sunday and social hour outside on the lawn from 12 to 1. You'll have a chance to learn about the work of some of our committees, and you'll be able to mix and mingle in an outdoor and masked setting. You can learn more about all that's happening at First Parish by going to our website, uuneedham.org, and you can also sign up for our weekly newsletter by going to our website and clicking Get Involved, Newsletter, or by sending a request to office@uuneedham.org. Our sincere hope is that these online services and connection opportunities will help us keep the physical distance required during this pandemic without losing the spiritual, emotional, and social closeness that we treasure in our faith community. If you're watching this service as a live stream, please take a moment now to say hello in the comment box. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Welcome again to everyone, and good morning.
As we light our chalice this morning and rainbow candle honoring Bisexuality Awareness Week, we read words from modern Japanese-American UU minister Reverend Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life we share.
Our opening hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are, has lyrics attributed to the 13th century Sufi Muslim mystic Jalaluddin Rumi, and a tune from Jewish Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Lynn Unger. The original poem asks for every person, regardless of religious affiliation or goodness, to return to the embrace of God's love, even and especially after making mistakes. Please join in singing from home, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, wanderer, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, 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 whoever you are, wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come yet again, come.
In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the covenant is a set of promises the membership of a congregation strives to honor with one another and out in the world. Though we cannot gather in person during this time, we strive to live these promises every day. Please say along with me from home the words of our parish covenant as shown on your screen. We gather as a loving community to encourage and comfort one another. We gather as a diverse community to support each other in our search for spiritual truth. We gather as a service community to live our beliefs through action and care for our world.
Good morning, everyone. As we begin our way into the new church and school year, this is a time when we are often thinking about the new. Fresh starts, new beginnings, and those starts often require our creativity and imagination. But sometimes that can feel difficult. In times with so much added stress, what do we do with tiny seeds of ideas? How do we make them grow? Today, we are going to be reading one of my favorite books. What Do You Do with an Idea? Written by Kobe Yamada with beautiful illustrations by May Bessam. Let's see if they can help us. What do you do with an idea? One day, I had an idea. Where did it come from? Why is it here? I wondered. What do you do with an idea? At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed kind of strange and fragile. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just walked away from it. I acted like it didn't belong to me, but it followed me. I worried about what others would think. What would people say about my idea? I kept it to myself. I hid it away and didn't talk about it. I tried to act like everything was the same as before my idea showed up. But there was something magical about my idea. I had to admit, I felt better and happier when it was around. It wanted food. It wanted to play. Actually, it wanted a lot of attention. It grew bigger and we became friends. I showed it to other people even though I was afraid of what they would say. I was afraid that if people saw it, they would laugh at it. I was afraid they would think it was silly. And many of them did. They said it was no good. They said it was too weird. They said it was a waste of time and that it would never become anything. And at first I believed them. I actually thought about giving up on my idea. I almost listened to them. But then I realized, what do they really know? This is my idea, I thought. No one knows it like I do. And it's okay if it's different and weird and maybe a little crazy. I decided to protect it, to care for it. I fed it good food. I worked with it. I played with it. But most of all, I gave it my attention. My idea grew, and so did my love for it. I built it a new house, one with an open roof where it could look up at the stars, a place where it could be safe to dream. I liked being with my idea. It made me feel more alive, like I could do anything. It encouraged me to think big and then to think bigger. It shared its secrets with me. It showed me how to walk on my hands because, it said, it is good to have the ability to see things differently. I couldn't imagine my life without it. Then, one day, something amazing happened. My idea changed right before my eyes. It spread its wings, took flight, and burst into the sky. I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just a part of me anymore. It was now a part of everything. And then I realized what you do with an idea. You change the world. When we're feeling sad or anxious, it's easy to forget that ideas don't start as giant things. They begin small. They start as tiny seeds of ideas that we need to plant and spend time with. And when we do that, when we spend time with our tiny seeds of ideas, that is when something special happens. When we spend that time with them, that's when they go, boom, bloom into something beautiful. What do you think you could do this week to spend some time with your ideas and help them bloom? What kind of food will you feed them? What kind of outfits will you dress them up in? What kind of fun will you have with your ideas this week? Blessed be.
We have now come to the time in our service when we share with one another joys and concerns from the past week that are very close to our hearts and to our lives. These joys and concerns were submitted to our ministerial intern, Jenna Crawford, at internminister@uuneedham.org by the Thursday before the service at midnight. If you did not submit a candle but would like to share with the community this morning, you are invited to either enter your message into the Zoom or YouTube chat box or share your candle in the Zoom social hour. As our services stream live to YouTube, we cannot guarantee that your joys, concerns, sorrows, and milestones will stay within the First Parish community. However, our Zoom social hour is contained just to the First Parish community, and you are always welcome to reach out to me, to Jenna, or to our Pastoral Care Associate of the Week, Lynn Jakowski, for pastoral care or to share more privately. If you're missing hearing each other's voices during this beloved ritual, may this also serve as a reminder to reach out to one another after the service. May this beloved community be sustained by your creativity and care for each other during this time. Our first candle this morning is a candle of sorrow from the First Parish staff, recognizing that the United States has passed a grim and preventable milestone of having 1 in every 500 residents die of COVID-19 since the first case was reported in February of 2020. May those in mourning find comfort, and may our nation and world find a way forward with this pandemic that protects the most vulnerable. Our second candle is also from the First Parish staff team, a candle in honor of our Jewish first parishioners and neighbors, hoping all of you had an easy fast this Yom Kippur. May you be sealed in the book of life. And for all the joys and sorrows that we may still carry in our hearts, and for the prayers of our neighbors near and far, we light one final silent candle. May the peace of this sanctuary be felt too in each of your homes, as we remember that even though apart, we are still deeply connected. Please join me now in the spirit of prayer and meditation with these words from queer Euro-American UU minister, Reverend Lynn Cox. Spirit of life, ancestor of the stars and the sun, you who embrace the vastness of space and us along with it, be with us today. Hold us in our worry, our exhaustion, our grief. Keep us close as we sit with our truth, whatever that may be. Lead us to rest in the quiet, to find solace and renewal in this time of shifting light and shadow. You whose arms open with the spinning galaxies, help us to make room as you do for all that is. Open our hearts to our loved ones, our neighbors, the beings with whom we share this planet. Lead us to reach out to others in compassion. Turn us toward one another in mercy, right relationship, and reconciliation. You who have seen the rising and the setting of suns, of seasons, of civilizations, remind us of all that we have learned from the history of the world and from our own histories. Give us the courage to face our mistakes and to repair them whenever possible. Help us understand our interdependence, our gravitational relatedness with all of the other spinning lives around us, and lead us to treat those relationships with care. In this virtual space, filled with people among us who shine like stars, this space filled with the sparkle of love and care, we give thanks for this moment of being connected together. May our senses be open to the beauty of this day, this season of the autumn equinox, this world. We continue our contemplation in quiet with the ringing of the singing bowl. Blessed be, and amen. Please now join in singing from home our meditative hymn, The Earth, Water, Fire, Air.
The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return. The earth, the water, the fire, the air, return, 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 return.
This congregation has been supported by the volunteered time and treasure of its members and friends since its founding in 1711. This is the time in our service when we, the modern stewards of this church, offer what we can to build and sustain the congregation and world we envision. For the rest of the month of September, we are sharing the plate with Imagine Waterworks. Imagine Waterworks is a New Orleans-based nonprofit offering mutual aid support to those affected by Hurricane Ida, as well as climate justice advocacy and mitigation efforts in the longer term. The approach of Imagine Waterworks is interdisciplinary, working in Louisiana with residents, neighborhood associations, nonprofits, artists, families, scientists, academics, architects, small business owners, and government agencies to create various resources for the community, hold space for conversation, and develop hazard mitigation plans in Louisiana and nationwide. Their work in the wake of Hurricane Ida is life-saving and keeps in mind the intersectional barriers and access to resources to rebuild. To donate to today's offering, you can use one of 3 different methods. You can use our Text to Give program through the number 73256 with the exact wording of UU Needham space plate or pledge 22 face $sign and the amount that you want to give. You can mail a check to First Parish at 23 Dedham Avenue, or you can make a donation through our website, uuneedham.org, and select Donate Now under the Giving box. Whichever way, remember to specify whether your donation is meant for the plate collection or for your annual pledge. Thank you for everything you are able to give to help support and sustain this congregation and the vital work of our community partners. Please take these next few moments to give what you can and know that it will be gratefully received.
Our reading this morning is an excerpt from The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain by Euro-American science writer Annie Murphy Paul. On the morning of April 18th, 2019, computer screens went dark across a swath of Seoul, South Korea's largest city. Lights flickered out in schools and offices across the 234 square mile metropolis, home to some 10 million people. Stoplights at street intersections blinked off. and electric power trains slowed to a halt. The cause of the blackout was as small in scale as its effects were widespread, a power outage caused by magpies. The black and white feathered birds who build their nests on utility poles and transmission towers. Magpies, members of the corvid family, which also includes crows, jays, and ravens, are well known for making their nests out of whatever is available in the environment. The birds have been observed using an astonishing array of materials, not only twigs, string, and moss, but also dental floss, fishing line, and plastic Easter eggs, chopsticks, spoons, and drinking straws, shoelaces, eyeglass frames, and croquet wickets. During the American Dust Bowl of the 1930s, which eliminated vegetation from huge swaths of the West, magpies' corvid cousins made nests out of barbed wire. The densely packed urban neighborhoods of modern-day Seoul featured a few trees or bushes, so magpies used what they could find: metal clothes hangers, TV antennas, and lengths of steel wire. These materials conduct electricity, and so when the birds build their nests on the city's tall electrical transmission towers, the flow of electricity is regularly disrupted. According to KEPCO, the Korea Electric Power Corporation, magpies are responsible for hundreds of power outages annually in areas all across the country. Each year, KEPCO employees work to remove upwards of 10,000 nests. But just as quickly, the magpies build them up again. Magpies may pose a headache for power companies, but their activity supplies a fallacious analogy for the way the mind works. Our brains, it might be said, are like magpies, fashioning their finished products from the materials around them, weaving the bits and pieces they find into their trains of thought. Set beside the brain as computer and brain as muscle metaphors, it's apparent that the brain as magpie is a very different kind of analogy, with very different implications for how mental processes operate. For one thing, thought happens not only inside the skull, but out in the world too. It's an act of continuous assembly and reassembly that draws on resources external to the brain. For another, the kinds of materials available to think with affect the nature and quality of the thought that can be produced. And last, the capacity to think well, that is, to be intelligent, is not a fixed property of the individual, but rather a shifting state that is dependent on access to extra neural resources and the knowledge of how to use them. Here ends our reading.
When reflecting on imagination as the ministry theme of the month, my mind went to two different places. First, to the song Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Laura and Kelvin's minds went there too. And then second, upon deeper reflection, I just realized, oh no. How was I supposed to preach about imagination and creativity when my own imagination was in dire need of a tune-up or a long hug or a really big shake? When it was probably long overdue that I took my imagination down to the Jiffy Lube and gave it a big old oil change, and then another in rapid succession. But then I remembered I probably wasn't alone in any of this. So I dug into the research and discovered the reading that we just finished, where Euro-American science writer Annie Murphy Paul takes readers into the amazing world of how magpies construct their nests. We heard that magpies use whatever is available. If twigs, string, and moss are around, great. But if they aren't, magpies will construct nests out of dental floss and fishing line, out of plastic Easter grass and chopsticks, out of croquet wickets, and in particularly dire times, metal clothes hangers and barbed wire. So why all this talk about magpies? Annie Murphy Paul wants us to know that brains, our brains, actually function more like magpies building their nests, creating meaning and inspiration and logic out of whatever is available to them, than a few of the more prominent but deeply flawed myths and metaphors for the brain that we are used to. We used to want to believe that our brains functioned like a computer, Murphy Paul proposes. Computers, of course, will function the same whether they are in a damp, dark room or right next to a window, whether they are isolated from other computers or in a fellowship of other computers. And of course, we wanted to believe that our brains worked like that, because if they did, no matter what was going on in our external world, whether we had regular access to green spaces or art, whether we loved our coworkers or not, whether we had someone in our life who constantly inspired us, we would produce the same quality work and think about the same quality thoughts. But it's no surprise that our brains do not work that way. The second metaphor that has outlived its usefulness is the brain as muscle metaphor, in which case, the harder you work your brain, the more times you practice your multiplication tables, the more essays that you write, the stronger it becomes, like a muscle. And of course, there is something to say about the importance of practice in perfecting a skill. But the muscle metaphor has its own flaws. This myth misunderstands the importance of rest and the randomness of breakthrough thinking, why sometimes your best ideas happen in the car or in the shower. Hence, the need for a new metaphor, says Murphy Paul, brain as magpies, creating meaning and inspiration and logic not out of thin air, but what is possible based on what is available, based on what is nearby. Think back to the time for all ages from this morning. Our ideas need resources. What do you do with an idea taught us that our ideas need food, that they want to play, that they need attention. Like a magpie's nest, they grow bigger and sturdier over time if there are more resources available to them. Reverend Katie and I can both probably attest to the good fit of the magpie metaphor when it comes to sermon writing. Sermon writing is generative and is random and often involves a lot of luck. We might have a sermon theme in our back pocket for a few weeks, but then hear a quote that fits really well, or have an experience that deepens the meaning, or read an article that can be included. All things that oftentimes happen to us based on what is happening around us. This is to say that my creative process has changed dramatically over the last 18 months, and maybe yours has too. I used to do in-person pulpit supply for the New England region before starting here in Needham, and there were certain places that I would go where I could really count on getting my twigs and string and moss for my sermons just by the sheer act of showing up and moving through those spaces. In-person church was a regular practice of mine, and before that, small group ministry. BU School of Theology's community lunch, where I would cross paths with people of different viewpoints and backgrounds and read the quotes on the wall and witness the art in the space, was a place that I often left with some twigs and string and moss. I would spend hours in coffee shops and take in the aroma of the coffee beans and the steamed milk and be able to access a certain way of thinking that was hard to come by elsewhere. I rode the T around town and saw different neighborhoods. I was invited to places I had never been before. I saw murals and heard street music. And all of this, on some subconscious level, my brain was fashioning into nests of my own creativity and solving problems without my needing to think consciously about them. So when all of our environments changed dramatically during this pandemic, the way that my brain worked changed. My sermons started to sport a lot more dental floss and clothes hangers. I struggled to find the usual twigs and moss. But beyond the sermon, the way I thought and came up with creative solutions to anything, the nests I was trying to build in my mind in response to any challenge, were scrappier and less robust than they used to be. Have you noticed any differences in your creative problem solving or the background noise thinking to your everyday life during the last year and a half? Have you felt a little bit not like yourself in some way or another? If so, type MB for magpie brain into the chat box. Now, from a neuroscience perspective on the effects of the pandemic, repeated stress is a major trigger for persistent inflammation in the body, which can actually shrink the part of our brain that affects learning and memory, the hippocampus. Though creative thinking comes from a combination of many different parts of the brain working together, the frontal cortex and the hippocampus are primary in promoting creative activity. Our brains and brain chemistry have changed a bit over these last 2 years, including a part of our brain responsible for our capacity to imagine. I am interested in the state of our imaginations today, not just because of how it can boost creativity for creative projects alone. An intact and well-exercised imagination does so much more than that. It also expands our social justice horizons, as Reverend Katie and I will talk about next week. It keeps us pliable enough to shape instead of be shaped by the new normals on the other side of this pandemic. And it counters feelings of despair and stuckness. Because hope comes from our ability to imagine different endings for ourselves, to imagine ourselves out of situations that we would really like to change. Imagination is so important. And let's not forget, with all of this talk about brains, that our mind influences so much more than our thinking alone. We have come so far from Descartes' I think, therefore I am. We know that our bodies keep the score, that they carry our stress as well as our hope. So what can we do in the meantime? While we are waiting to find ourselves in a world abundant with twigs and string and moss for our nests, while we are waiting on that really good oil change for our imaginations. And those things will come in due time, but what can we do in the meantime? First, we can be gentle with ourselves and just name it. We can remember that if our creativity needs a boost, it is not our own deficiency or our own faults. We can take refuge in Annie Murphy Paul's kind reminders to us. Thought happens not only inside the skull, but out in the world too. The capacity to think well is not a fixed property of the individual, but rather a shifting state that is dependent on access to extraneural resources and the knowledge of how to use them. We can normalize brain fog. in between the alpha and delta strands of the virus and post-vaccinations for both of them, my two good seminary friends went to get coffee at a local cafe that they had not been to in a long time. They tell a very charming story of their time there. On their way out, my friend Mahalia held the door for somebody who was also walking out. The stranger turned and said, "Thank you," but instead of "You're welcome," or "No problem," or "Have a good day," Mahalia instead blurted out, "No robbery." Nobody has any clue what she was trying to say to that kind, confused stranger, not even Mahalia herself. Our brains are not working at 100% right now, but we can normalize brain fog. On the other side of this, we might continue to ask what functioning at 100% even means, and how our internalized capitalism affects the unreachable norms that we create in the workplace and in ourselves. Second, if we buy into the magpie metaphor, what follows is that our brains need to walk among those street murals and ride the T around town and smell steamed milk and coffee beans. What if we made time for those things, or whatever your equivalent might be, as diligently as we made time to grocery shop and do our laundry? When Annie Murphy Paul was being interviewed about her book on the Ezra Klein show, Klein asked her something about what he calls the productivity paradox. He explains that what so often feels and looks like productivity and efficiency to us are often the very activities and habits that stunt our thinking. And many of the habits and activities that look like leisure sometimes even look like play. Like if you've taken a nap or a walk in the middle of the workday, those end up unlocking our thinking. So let's make real time for rest and for play. Latinx UU religious educator Julica Herman de la Fuente talks about Unitarian Universalists and our ethic of control. Imagination, on the other hand, thrives when we give up a little bit of that control for an ethic of risk, for a theology of rest, for a theology of play. A Harvard Business Review article called "We Need Imagination Now More Than Ever" proposes carving out some time every day for reflection, through regular deep breathing, by taking time over a meal to rest, digest, and reflect, and by going for a walk without your phone, as crucial to boosting creativity. So first, we can be gentle with ourselves and name it. We can normalize brain fog and the fact that all of our imaginations are a little bit in need of an oil change these days. And second, we can remember the productivity paradox and replace our ethic of control with an ethic of risk, carving out time for rest, play, murals, coffee beans, and steamed milk as we go. So that's in the short term. I've already begun to hint a little bit at the long term, but when I see our brains as magpies, I see the world differently. I see a world that is evaluating everyone as if we had computers for brains, which doesn't leave a lot of room for neurodivergence, different learning styles and modalities and gifts, or for folks of differing abilities. It doesn't take into account that we all burn out and that we are all affected by the world around us, usually more than we care to admit, and refuses to do anything structurally about lack of access to green spaces or art or mentoring in communities because, well, it doesn't matter that much. But if Our brains are magpies, then it is the difference between asking someone to go through school, building nests out of twigs and string and moss, or out of clothes hangers and barbed wire. So may we be radically gentle toward ourselves and our imagination these days, even as we explore imagination as a spiritual theme in church this month. May we risk seeing the world a little differently. And may that shift allow us to spread a little more justice toward ourselves and into our systems. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll sink into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in a world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you want a new paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Wanna change the world, there's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with your imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. If you want a real paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world, there's nothing to it. There is no life I know to compare with your imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be.
As we close our worship today, please remember that all are welcome to join in our Zoom social hour just after this service has ended. And then please drop by for our front lawn at 23 Dedham Avenue anytime between noon and 1 for our volunteer fair. Please wear your mask for the safety and comfort of all. Keep a careful eye out for emails and social media posts from First Parish so you can keep up with opportunities for connection for all ages throughout the week during these times of physical isolation. You can sign up for our weekly email by clicking on Subscribe to Newsletter on our website, uuneedham.org. If you fall ill or need any pastoral support during this difficult year, please reach out to me and Jenna Crawford and our amazing pastoral care and caring crew teams via phone or email. Let our office administrator, Susanna Whitman at office@uuneedham.org, know if you need any assistance logging into our Realm directory system to find other First Parishioners. We always extinguish our chalice with words promising to carry its flame in our hearts until we are together again, no matter how long it is until we are together again. Please join me from home in saying these words written by Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Elizabeth Sally Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing hymn, Come Sing a Song With Me, was written by modern Euro-American activist and singer-songwriter Carolyn McDade. McDade once said her favorite time singing this hymn was just down the road in Framingham with women who at the time were imprisoned. Please join in singing from home. Come sing a song with me.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream or dream with me. Come dream or dream with me. Come dream or dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
As we close our worship today, take these words from Euro-American novelist Barbara Kingsolver with you as a benediction. In my own worst seasons, I have come back from the colorless world of despair by forcing myself to look hard for a long time at a single glorious thing, a flame of red geranium outside my bedroom, and then another, my daughter in a yellow dress, and another, the perfect outline of a full dark sphere behind the crescent moon, until I learned to be in love with my life again, like a stroke victim retraining new parts of the brain to grasp lost skills. I have taught myself joy over and over again. Our service begins when our service ends. Blessed be, and amen.
1, 2, 3, 4.